Today, we're getting into the playbook of Melanie Perkins, the founder of Canva. We're going to deconstruct the core philosophies she used to build an absolute global powerhouse. And we're not just talking theory, we're going to look at the exact mental models and frameworks drawn straight from her own words.
So, let's start with a number, 100 plus. That's how many investors told her no, more than 100 rejections. You've probably heard that part of the story, but honestly, that's just the opening scene.
And this is Canva's valuation today, $42 billion. So the real question is, what happened in between those two numbers? How in the world do you go from over 100 no's to a $42 billion yes? Well, it started right here, with this insane level of conviction, believing in a vision that pretty much no one else could see. But it was way more than just blind faith. It was a repeatable system, a system for making impossible ideas real. All right, let's dive into it. Here's our roadmap. We're breaking down 5 core frameworks: the column B thinking method, the chaos to clarity process, the fuel they use called crazy big goals, a huge lesson on perseverance, and finally, the 2-step master plan that drives the whole thing.
So first up, we've got to talk about the foundational mental model for everything Canva does. It's a concept Melanie Perkins calls column B thinking. Seriously, this is the core of their entire approach.
See, most companies, operate in column A. You look at the resources you have right now, the bricks, and you figure out what you can build. Perkins says no, you have to start in column B. You imagine the absolute perfect future, that castle on the hill, and then you work backwards to figure out how to build a ladder to get there.
And here's the crucial part. You don't start with what's possible today. You have to start with that impossibly big dream of a, quote, magical, wonderful future. For Canva, that was this idea that all design would be online, collaborative, and simple. And remember, she had this vision when she had no product, no team, and no money.
Okay, but a vision is just a dream without execution, right? A castle on the hill is just a pretty picture. So how do you actually build that ladder? Well, that brings us to Canva's execution engine, their process for turning these big, abstract, column B ideas into real products. They use a framework called chaos to clarity. You know how it is. Every great idea starts as just this big, amorphous blob in your head. It's chaos. The goal is to systematically, step-by-step, add layers of clarity. First, you just write it down. Then you make a pitch deck. Then you create designs. Then a prototype. And with each step, the vision gets less chaotic and more real, until it's something other people can finally see and get behind. Perkins has this amazing way of putting it. She says you have to nurture those early, embarrassing ideas. You know that first step, when your idea is just a single sentence? It can feel so small and stupid compared to that huge vision. But that's the most important step of all, because it's the first step out of chaos.
So what fuels this whole engine? What powers a team through all the hard work of turning that chaos into clarity? Well, the answer is a core company value, setting crazy big goals.
Their main mission is broken down into these ridiculously audacious pillars. I mean, look at these. The goals for each pillar are designed to be so big that, in Perkins' own words, they make you feel completely inadequate. And that's the point. A goal that huge forces you to work your tail off to literally will it into existence. And you can see how this ties right back to column B thinking, right? You can't even set goals like this unless you're starting from that imagined future.
Now, these frameworks all sound great in a presentation, but they get tested under extreme pressure. So let's look at one of Canva's hardest periods, a time they actually call the dark, dark tunnel. So, early on, they needed to do this critical front-end rewrite. The original projection was 6 months, but they hit a massive bottleneck. Because of how their original code was structured, only about 5 engineers could work on the editor at the same time. The final reality? It took 2 full years. I mean, just let that sink in. For 2 years, Canva was a product company that couldn't ship any new features, all while their competitors were launching new stuff constantly. Perkins said it felt like they were just stuck in this dark, dark tunnel. It just shows you the insane resilience you need to see a crazy big goal through, especially when the timeline completely explodes. So, what gets you through a 2-year tunnel like that? It's not just about being tough. It's about being driven by a purpose that's so much bigger than the product itself. And this brings us to the ultimate crazy big goal, at the very heart of Canva, the 2-step plan. Now, this is just brilliant. The key is that it's not sequential. You don't wait to finish step 1 before you start step 2. It's a feedback loop.
Step 1, building a huge company, actively fuels Step 2. And Step 2, doing good, gives profound meaning and motivation to all the hard work of Step 1.
And this is not just some feel-good mission statement on a poster. To make it real, the founders have committed over 30% of Canva's equity, that's their own personal stake in the company, to the Canva Foundation.
And that commitment is already having a massive impact. It's resulted in major donations, including an initial $50 million to give directly, which provides direct cash transfers to people living in extreme poverty in Malawi.
And they're not stopping. They just announced another $100 million donation over the next 4 years to keep that work going. This is what the two-step plan looks like in action, using the company's success to make a tangible difference in the world.
So when you look at all of it, column B, chaos to clarity, crazy big goals, you realize they're not just a random list of ideas. They're all parts of a single interconnected engine, and they all spring from one core belief: the power of imagination. The idea that before you can build anything, you first have to be able to see it in your mind. So I think the biggest takeaway here is this: the whole process of creation doesn't start with a spreadsheet or a business plan. It starts with daring to imagine a future that doesn't exist yet. And that leaves us with the final question, the same one that started everything for Canva. What future will you imagine into existence?